Thanks. All right, we'll go ahead and call the meeting to order. The proper notice has been applied for our special meeting of the Stark County Port Authority today. I'll go ahead and call the roll. Mr. Luther? Here. Mr. Mans? Here. Mr. Mann? Here. That does constitute a quorum. And we will go right into the discussion on the Hall of Fame Village Stadium project. Dan, do you want it, or Sam, do you want it?
Well, I would turn it over to Sam to explain to us the documents that you folks got.
Sure. What we have before us ultimately is the resolution authorizing the execution and delivery of a cooperative agreement, as well as a couple of declarations in regard to the TIF bonds that are being issued in support of public infrastructure improvements for the stadium project and the youth fields project. As I'm sure you're all well aware, the Summit Port Authority does not have jurisdiction in Stark County. The jurisdiction is for the Stark County Port Authority. So as part of this project, the Summit Port Authority will be issuing the bonds in question. So as part of that transaction, what they need from us is a cooperative agreement by which we agree pursuant to Ohio law to allow them to exercise this right within our jurisdiction in regard to the issuance of the bonds. So in the typical transaction, that would be the only document we really would be dealing with, is the cooperative agreement by which we give them jurisdiction. And by the way, that jurisdiction is solely for the issuance of these particular bonds, not as to any other bonds or any other issuances in regard to the projects at question. What adds a little twist here is that we're dealing with TIF bonds, and pursuant to the way that we've structured these transactions, the Stark County Port Authority is an owner for purposes of the declarations that are required as part of the TIF bond financing. So not only do you have the underlying fee owner, which is the school district, you've also got the city, because the city has a reversion right pursuant to the deed by which they granted the property to the school district. And then you have the Hall of Fame, because the Hall of Fame has leases back and forth that underlie our ground leases and project lease in regard to these properties. So the Hall of Fame is a signer on this too, as far as the declaration. So what the declaration does is it's an acknowledgement by us that the property is subject to the provisions in regard to the compensation agreement and the cooperative agreement and the other TIF-related documents. Now, if you read that declaration, God bless you if you did, yes. It says, no, I'm still awake, second cup of coffee. It says that we as an owner have certain obligations, but what it gives, it also takes away, because it recognizes that the Port Authority's only obligation that can be enforced only against the property, not against the Port Authority's credit. So the Port Authority has no obligation to make any of those payments independent of that. And it shall all recollect the way that the ground lease and the project leases are set up. Any obligations that the Port Authority has to pay taxes or the like, and what we're talking about here are payments in lieu of taxes, those obligations flow up to the lessee under the project lease. So ultimately, people that are liable for the payment of taxes in regard to the properties are the lessees. It would be Hall of Fame Village Stadium and Hall of Fame Village and Youth Fields. The same thing in the cooperative agreement. There is no independent liability for the Stark County Port Authority. All that you're doing is giving jurisdiction, and it recognizes and limits any liability that we have under the circumstances. If anybody has any questions or need clarifications, we can discuss them.
So Sam, because TIFs are limited to public infrastructure, and because it looks like these are reimbursements for things already done or in progress of being done, what infrastructure exactly are we talking about?
Well, I think it's infrastructure that's supporting the youth fields in the stadium. My recollection, there's road improvements, storm sewers, I think there's some electric substation, and they've moved some of the lines. I don't know all of the details. As part of that, what they have to do is they have to work with the city. There's a development agreement that the developer entered into with the city, independent of us. And pursuant to that development agreement, in part what they're still trying to get their T's crossed and their I's dotted are in regard to what those expenditures are, evidence those expenditures were made, and then they make a disbursement request. As of the call, was it at 1 o'clock, I believe, this afternoon, Bruce Soares, one of the counsel for the city, said he expected to have all of that nailed down sometime today.
So this was, just to be, so I'm clear, this was a TIF authorized by the city, signed off on by both school districts who are in the vicinity of the Hall of Fame project.
Right.
And between those two, they have compensation agreements between the two school districts.
Yeah, the way a TIF's set up.
To add even more complexity.
Yeah, the way a TIF's set up is to the extent that the developer makes an improvement, that increase in incremental value.
Right.
Rather than paying taxes on that, you make payments in lieu of taxes. As you're pointing out, pursuant to the compensation agreement, which the school districts are a party to, a percentage of those pilots' payments in lieu of taxes are paid to the city and then paid to the school districts. And then the remaining, I think it's 75% here, that can be used by the developer in order to leverage his development. So that 75% would go towards the payment of the TIF bonds, the debt service on those. And the period that would be for is 30 years.
And because it's 30 years, not 10, both school boards had to sign off on this and approve it, correct?
Yeah.
And they have done that.
Yes. That was probably 2 years ago. Time flies.
And I saw the acceleration of the interest rate as you move through the 30-year term. Back to Brandt's comment about the allocation of funds towards public issue. Is that public record? I mean,
What?
well, the agreement between the city and...
Yeah, the cooperative agreement, I'm sorry,
Right.
the compensation agreement, yes.
Yeah, no, but I
The
meant
development agreement.
The development agreement.
You said the city
I
and
would
the
think
developer
so.
agreed
I would
to
see
do
that,
certain
yeah, I would see that, why not?
Yeah, I mean, I'd like to just, I'd like to see where that money goes.
Yeah, I don't think it's, the compensation agreement talks about the allocation of the monies between the city and the developer and the school districts.
Right.
Then the development agreement talks about the development. I'll get you both of them, you can take a peek.
I'm just curious, I mean, when they talk about X million going towards off-site improvements or sewer or whatever, I'm just curious, that doesn't have anything to do with this meeting
Yeah.
necessarily.
Yeah.
It'd be interesting.
But they're paying what the tax increase, what the taxes would be on that increased value. They're paying that, that's the dollars they're using to pay the fees on.
Right, and for example, originally this issuance was going to be in the neighborhood of 12 million, and now it's down to what, 10 million, Dan?
10,030,000.
Yeah.
10 what again?
10,030,000.
And
From
that's-
12.
Correct.
Yeah, and that's because of the valuation.
Right.
I think they were originally hoping for a valuation of around 45 million.
And it came in at 40, I think.
Yeah, and so, once again, to your point, those payments service the debt if the payments aren't enough, and they've got to reduce the debt amount for it. Yeah, and it's interesting, the valuations. There's an interesting, did you circulate that article from the Columbus paper about Nationwide
Nationwide
Arena? Yeah, I mean, they put, I think, what, about 150, 160 million into that project, and that valuation was low. Because you already said the nature of these types of improvements, it's really dependent on cash flow. It's not dependent on bricks and mortar.
But you still have to service the debt on the bricks and mortar.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, that's, that whole, when it costs X to build it, and you're telling me that the appraised value is X minus, and it's within a couple of years' time, and it's a substantial differential, Sam. I personally have trouble with understanding that, but it is what it is. You know, you build something.
Well, I mean, I think that one of the reasons I'm curious about exactly what public infrastructure projects, even though it's not us floating the bond, it is to be public infrastructure, and I'm just wanting to know
And it
what
has-
that is. And I guess my real question is, who is the one doing the due diligence and verifying that it is what it says?
That's what I was going to say. The city has to accept those improvements. So when I talked about the conversation on Call It One, when Bruce Soares, the attorney for the city, was talking about that, that's what I'm talking about. The city reviews that.
So the city has to satisfy itself and check off on the list that's provided for, here, we want reimbursements to these projects, and the city has to say, yes, that's public infrastructure, and we approve
That's
releasing this fund.
part of the process, is then reviewing that against the TIF legislation, as you pointed out earlier, that was put in place. There's also the bond opinion. So bond counsel renders an opinion that it fits within the statutory requirements so you qualify for the tax-free aspects. So you've got that due diligence going on also.
And who is that?
That's Russell Andrews.
I can't imagine anything being more complicated.
And we talked about in previous meetings, the issue you've got here is the divergence between the owner of the fee and the beneficiary. So that caused a lot of complications.
And you got a lot of chefs in the kitchen. Further questions, further discussion?
Well answered. Thank you.
My main concern is that somebody is doing due diligence somewhere, that these are public infrastructure qualified projects, and that it's just not a carte blanche
You know, there are-
distribution.
To get that, ultimately, to get that opinion of bond counsel, that requires that you
Jump through the hoops.
Yeah, just like you would in any other tax-free financing, where bond counsel has to issue that opinion. You've got the questionnaires that are answered by the participants in order to establish that exemption.
What we have before us is Resolution 2001-8-2. I'll go ahead and read it just for the purpose of this meeting. A cooperative agreement and an acknowledgement and declaration relating to service payments in lieu of taxes and related matters as part of the issuance of TIF bonds by the Development Finance Authority of Suffolk County for the benefit of the Hall of Fame Village Stadium and youth fields, TIF projects, and other related documents, as well as consideration of any other documents or matters in relation to the issuance of the TIF bonds and related matters. Is there a motion related to Resolution 2001-8-2, please?
Make the motion to accept.
Is there a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second regarding Resolution 2001-8-2. Any further discussion or questions of Sam?
Sam, in the cooperative agreement, page 11 under insurance, talks about the owner shall at all times, and that it has little I through VI. Who's currently insuring the structure, and is that?
Would be the
blanket policy?
project lessee.
Lessee is.
Yeah, what we did there, Brant, was when we looked at the way this was originally set up, we wanted to make sure it integrated with the project leases as far as the insurance requirements. So that's why you have that introductory clause that says while the Port Authority is an owner,
But for
that those things
purposes
come
of-
into play. Yeah, because
Just
it
want to
wasn't.
verify that it's not us and that it is in place.
Yeah, yeah.
Further
I,
discussion?
you know, all I know is we've never received a notice of cancellation, so Dan would know if
I would have it.
Yeah,
We're named on the policy. I'm sorry,
No, no.
we're named on the policy.
yeah. Yeah, we are, yeah.
Who's not?
I'd have to.
Further discussion? Hearing no further discussion, I'll go ahead and call for the roll vote. Mr. Mance?
Yes.
Mr. Luther?
Yes.
Mr. Mann, yes. The resolution 2001-8-2 is passed. Is there any other business to come before us today? If not, I'll entertain a motion to,
Just before we go, Roger, do you mind? I'm just hoping that we can not have any further special meetings scheduled
Yeah.
until we actually have documents in hand, final documents in place, because this is really getting old.
and I have been pushing, quite frankly, to conduct business in our regularly scheduled meeting. And I think that word's gotten out a little bit because we can't have all this running around and so forth. Anything else? If not, is there a motion to close the meeting, please? Thank you. We have a motion and a second to close the meeting. Mr. Mance?
Aye.
Mr. Luther?
Yes.
Mr. Mann, yes. The meeting is adjourned. Thank you very much, gentlemen.
Thanks.